What are we doing? 10 years later, I got an officer fighting for his life. It's enough, and I'm done with it. We're not doing it here in Ferguson. Our community is united behind us. Our community is fed up. We want to heal. Our community want to heal. We want people to peacefully protest, but we damn sure ain't gonna allow you to destroy this city, and we ain't gonna allow you to hurt none of these police officers. We are united here in this city. We're done with it. We're not doing it anymore.
Very powerful, right? That went viral because he spoke from the heart, and the emotions come out when you are just done with it, as you just heard him say. Ferguson, Missouri Police Chief Troy Doyle in studio with us for the next hour. First of all, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Monica. Happy to be here.
I tell you what, I watched that and I started crying. Obviously, a lot of you know I am the wife of a police officer who you know very well.
Yes.
Lieutenant James Quentin with St. Louis County knows Troy very, very well and says hi, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, I watched that, and emotions for all of us across the board when you think of our community and you think, have we not come any further in the last 10 years? You had things that were provided for you, but you set them aside. Why?
Because I thought at that particular time, Monica, it was time for, instead of me having just talking points, let's talk from the heart. Let's just be truthful. Let's be honest on what's taking place in our community and what's taking place in society. And I know I made my PIO a little bit nervous that day. However, it was extremely important for me to get what was on my chest out.
And I'm so glad you did. There's one thing that people always say, and they just hope that people speak from the heart and become, you were so real that day and so raw and so passionate, and that all came out. We don't want to start with anything else besides, first of all, wanting to know, how is TJ, Officer Travis Brown, who was injured? If you have not heard this story, this is over a week ago now, of what happened 10 years after Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, and people were gathering. It was peaceful until it wasn't. And then this happens, and we'll talk about that. But how is Officer Brown doing?
So I went to the hospital yesterday. He's obviously in stable but serious condition. He's making some incremental improvement each and every day, which is positive, you know. However, he has a long way to go for recovery.
And I understand that you and the community have been there night after night, day after day. The community is really showing up. There is a GoFundMe, and I will have my team drop that in the comments. You know, I know last week I said $50,000, $70,000, $100,000, $125,000. Do you know where it is at this point?
Oh, I know it's well over $160,000, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Thank you to the community.
Yes.
Don't stop, by the way, as well as the organizations that unfortunately have to step in when these things happen. Officers killed in the line of duty, injured and may never be able to return. We hope that he will be able to.
Yes.
You know, we just got an update on how Officer Brown is doing, but it's a long road. We're not saying that he's better and he returns to work.
Absolutely. And, you know, obviously we all have him in our prayers and hoping that he has a full recovery. But, I mean, he has a lot. He has a lot to go through before we get there.
I want to know who he is as a person. I've heard you talk about St. Louis County, and you just smiled because that's what everybody says is the smile.
He is. You know, TJ, everybody who knows TJ would tell you he is the model police officer. I mean, everything that you want in a police officer is TJ. I mean, he knows the tactical end of being policing, but he also knows the community engagement end of being a policeman. He is the officer who would get out of his patrol car, would interact with kids, he just enjoys. I mean, he's the type of guy would go into a convenience store and just buy a random person a drink or, you know, or something. I mean, he's just that type of guy, you know.
We're looking at pictures, and you're seeing that $1 million smile. I saw him. Was that his father's 70th birthday party that he was recently at?
Yes.
Good dancer.
Oh, he's a heck of a dancer.
We want to bring that smile back, by the way. And I do want to tell you that with our chief on, if you have any comments and you want to send this out to the community, to the family, to the friends of TJ, I saw a video, I think both on Channel 5 and on Channel 4, where Officer Brown's sister was being interviewed, and she said she can't go into the hospital room yet. She won't go in there until he opens his eyes, she says.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you know, if you see one of your loved ones in that state, I mean, it's difficult to walk in there and see anyone like that, you know. So I can only imagine, you know, what she's going through right now.
Absolutely. I want to go back to that night, and I will have the chief break down, because there were a lot of rumors and a lot of fake, false accusations that were put out, and this is why there is body camera footage. There's a lot of changes that have happened in the last 10 years that we're going to talk about. Sure. So let's show you this, courtesy of Ferguson Police Department, and you will see exactly what played out that night.
Come here, my man.
Hey, where the baby at?
Excuse us. You under arrest, bro? Hey, come on. Hey, cut that way. 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 Move. Back up. Back up. Hey, Brown. Stay over there. Hold the line. Back the fuck up. 85. I got officer down. Officer down.
Okay. It happened last night. It's happening again. Hard to watch, Chief.
It is.
You and I both. You hear them say, back off, we've got an officer down. And then it goes on. It's about 8.5 minutes of a video that is out there if you want to see the full amount. But can you say what was originally put out to the public, what the public put out of saying what had happened that night?
So the public originally said that the police officers went out, stormed the crowd, and caused this chaos, as they described it. However, if you watch TJ's body cam and officers, their body cam, along with camera footage from one of the businesses there right there, it clearly shows that the officers calmly walked out there. TJ actually made a comment to the suspect and said, hey, bro, you're under arrest, come here. The guy at that point attempted to elude TJ. TJ went one way, directed the officers to go another way. As he stood there, this guy, again, viciously just bulldozed, ran over my guy viciously.
And you're looking at more video here. There, like I said, there's a full 8.5 minute video that I encourage you to watch because you will see them inside the fire department and then open those doors and absolutely 100% of what the chief just said, calmly walk out. Mm-hmm. You clearly hear him say, you're under arrest. And then you see everything. What becomes very chilling is your other officers around him when they realize that TJ is not getting up. And they say, TJ. Yes. And then realize he's in danger.
Yes. And, there's obviously some language used in the video, but people have to understand we're dealing with a chaotic scene at this particular point, and the officers there were more worried about TJ, so they were trying to keep the crowd back because people were trying to take pictures, and it was just, we had to get everyone back at that particular point because now we had one officer down, and the important thing at that point was try to get him the help that he needed and get him out of there.
And move him from there, make sure that he's okay. There's so much that they're assessing. I mean, you don't understand the heroes that they are. Yes. Trying to figure out, can we move him?
Right.
Does he have a head injury? He obviously did, but we've got to get him and be able to take him to the hospital. You just mentioned something that if we go back decades, we didn't have these.
We didn't.
How infuriating is it when you are in a situation like that and everyone's trying to huddle in and take pictures and video of this?
It is hard. And, we know that everyone has a right to film and do what they want. But when it gets to the point where you actually have these phones directly in the police officer's face, I mean, especially doing something like that, it is just is infuriating.
It is, because if it was switched, and this is what I would always say, if it's switched and it's you or it's one of your loved ones and you are being suffocated by everyone trying to take, like paparazzi,
right.
You would scream expletives as well.
Absolutely.
Get out of here. We've got someone we have to be taking care of.
Absolutely.
We're going to look back, by the way, of 10 years ago. We all know what happened with Michael Brown. It wasn't a Ferguson thing. It wasn't a St. Louis thing. It took over the world, and so much has changed. Journalism has changed. Policing has changed. We've got a side-by-side, and I want to thank your public information officer of Washington, by the way. She's been such a pleasure to work with. She provided this for us to take us back. Let's look at this row by row. So Ferguson Police Department in 2014, your staffing level, chief, was 60 total.
Yes.
Now, 50 total, but 47 actually currently. It's
Yes.
dropping.
Yes.
And what do you attribute that to?
So they cut staffing, I think around 2015, 2016, they cut staffing at the police departments as far as the authorized manpower or the strength there. However, when I arrived at Ferguson April of last year, they were roughly about 49% staffed. And right now, we sit about 78% staffed right now. So we are now starting to get people to apply, to want to be police officers, but it's still a challenge.
And how do you get the message across? Because you can remember back. Let me ask you that because I don't know that answer. When did you know you wanted to be a police officer?
Oh man, that's a long story, but the short end of it is that, again, African American youth growing up in North County, I was one that got pulled over quite often. I'll tell people I got a trophy for it at this particular point, but it didn't discourage me from becoming a law enforcement officer. It actually pushed me in the direction I want to be part of the change.
And as you go into schools, how do you get that message across to other young boys and girls of all ethnicities?
Absolutely. We tell them about, the good things that law enforcement do, the importance of law enforcement, and we encourage them. If you want to make a difference in your community, this is a good profession to be in.
Absolutely. And we need that. We need more minds as you move forward. We need the youth to want to step in. I know there's a lot of parents out there that say, oh, I don't want them to go in and I'm scared for them. And I understand that.
Yes.
I mean, being the wife of an officer, I get it. But you just have to, I'm very faith-based, so you have to put your hand
Absolutely.
in God's hands and say, take care of them. Again, breaking down this year to 10 years ago. We'll go back to that slide. We just talked about staffing. Now, for those that are looking at where we were in 2014 to where we are in 2024, not a diverse department 10 years ago. 4 African Americans total. Now, 49% African American and 24% female. We're doing this, by the way, and we'll keep going back to the slide side by side because we're trying to show changes that were made.
Yes.
And these are changes that the community asked for.
Absolutely. And as you can see from the slides, we're continuing to make these changes year by year, month by month, day by day. And our community, the people who reside in Ferguson are very supportive of this police department, and they're proud of the police department. They're proud of the changes that we've made. What they're aggravated about is the people who are on the outside who really don't understand our community that comes in and causes divisiveness.
And that is what needs to be driven into everybody's heads. These are bad people, and it's a smaller percentage.
Yes.
Right? It's the same thing that you hear about police officers are bad. There are bad in all aspects of life and every profession, but that is such a small percentage, but that's what hits the headlines of the news, which is why I stepped away, because I wanted the real story to be out there. Again, let's go back 10 years ago to 2024 and continue to tell you what has changed. The courts reported to the police chief and the finance director 10 years ago, now part of the St. Louis County system.
Right. So back in 2014, the police chief basically overseen the courts. And if you recall, Ferguson was accused of being heavy-handed in regards to fines on traffic stops, things of that nature. So what they did essentially was just separate the courts. So the police department don't have anything to do with the courts now. The courts is basically ran by the city, who obviously goes through St. Louis County now.
Okay, and then a review of officer conduct was internal only. Now it has a civilian review board.
Yes. So we have a group of residents that are actually Ferguson residents that whenever we get a citizen complaint, not only do we review it, but the Citizens Review Board review the complaint also.
And this one I think is very powerful. The Ferguson Police Department community relationships were strained.
Yes.
Now they've adopted a community policing model. How's that going, Chief?
Real good. Well, so every time one of our neighborhoods have like an association meeting, we always have an officer there at those meetings to address any issues or concerns that they may have. Myself, I try to attend as many as I can because I think it's important for a community, especially that size, to see their police chief and hear from the things that we have going on. So we're vastly invested in our community. Last year we had an open house for the community. We had a lot of residents that came out, had them do a tour of the police department, get an opportunity to meet some of the police officers. So we're out there engaging.
Well, and you just said something I think is very powerful. From a woman who was in the media for 30 years, when we would see press conferences. If the police chief is not there,
Yes.
that's a problem.
It is.
And I will say, when you were with St. Louis County, Chief John Belmar was incredible.
Yes.
He was at everything. His face was out there. Then all of a sudden we see the change, and actually Chief Fitch was as well. But then we saw a change, and it was suddenly, right? I'm not going to go there, but you have to be, and you
Yes.
understand that.
Yes.
If you have someone else always stepping in for you, and the
Absolutely.
media is asking, well, where's the chief, and you're non-existent, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if this comes with a lot of responsibility, and if you don't want the responsibility, then step out of the way, because people are looking at you when things happen at this Ferguson Police Department. Yeah, they may blame an officer, but ultimately they looking at the leadership, who runs this police department, who's making these decisions. So it's important that I step out there and be face forward in regards to addressing some of these issues and concerns.
And one more on that slide before we take our first break. Again, we're going from 2014 to 2024, minimal training on protest. Now, that's really powerful. Minimal training on protest and other things of that nature. Now, bias-free policing and constitutionally protected rights.
Yes, so all those trainings we just completed within the last year. So believe it or not, the First Amendment rights, which garners protest, we just completed that training within like a month before the anniversary date. So our guys were well trained. They were, up to date with the latest training in those
Don't you
areas.
feel we kind of had to have? Because if we look 10 years ago of what happened with Michael Brown, protests have been at everything, bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, we just talked about protests last night at the DNC.
Yes, it's getting, I mean, I've heard from police chiefs from across the nation, and everyone is dealing with it. And I know here locally, we train for a protest, but not to the scale that what took place in 2014. I think we have a better understanding of the protest movement, why people protest, and, we have better ways to try to handle it.
And I think that's a question a lot of people have who have never stepped into a protest. That is what they ask. Why? Why can't it stay peaceful? We understand if you want to gather in a place that doesn't disrupt traffic. But then, of course, the people who protest say, yeah, but we can't get your message across until we disrupt your life.
Right.
It's all of that. Shutting down highways and then breaking things, setting fires to things, literally having no regard for another person's life. We're looking at, we've got a few pictures that your PIO provided for us. Were these prayer vigils that had just taken place?
Yes. This took place several days after the what took place with Travis Brown, and as you can see, I mean, we had just outstanding, overwhelming outpouring of community support that day. A lot of people from the clergy came out and prayed with the police officers in the community, and as I told people there at that vigil, this is what community looks like, and this is what it should be.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. Again, Chief Troy Doyle, my guest from the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department. More with the chief when we return.
She's got it for $8,700. You're welcome.
Yes, we do tackle some very serious topics sometimes, but we're always looking for the light. There's always a light somewhere, or we hope it is. And today it's really about how do we heal in Ferguson and as a world. A lot of people saying, Chief Doyle and Officer Brown, thank you both for your service. Chief, you are doing an amazing job. That's from Maryland. The GoFundMe, by the way, for Officer Brown has been posted in our comments on Facebook, so you can click on that and continue to raise money so you can show the Brown family, the friends, just how much you are there for him. Good morning, Chief. I'm praying for TJ. Thank you, Chief, for what you and your officers do each and every day. We thank our officers. Prayers for Officer Brown and his family. Again, if you have any questions or comments, I'll look at this as we have the chief in studio. Let's also give an update on the suspect. So Elijah Gant, there was a bond reduction hearing yesterday,
Yes.
and it was waived.
Yeah, it got waived. He obtained an attorney at the last minute, and so I think they want to continue it, I believe, September 11th, if I'm not mistaken.
$500,000 cash-only bond, right?
Yes.
Yes, I believe he has Scott Rosenblum.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's talk about what you said in that press conference that I thought was so powerful. You ran through and said, we've done this, we've done this. A lot of those officers back in 2014 you mentioned are not here. I did see a comment on, I believe it was X yesterday, the comments from the community, and you have the right to do so, please. They said, well, that we're praying for Officer Brown and we pray for the officers, but I do have a problem with that. So they said, yes, those officers, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. That's what some people were saying. Address that comment.
They're saying that the officer shouldn't have been out there making the arrest.
Yeah.
I mean, again, and I try to be patient when I hear those type of comments. People have to understand that we knew that there was a planned protest for that evening. My officers, the only instructions that they had that whole day was that we will allow people to show up, exercise their First Amendment rights. However, what we would not tolerate is no violence and no destruction of property. So when they actually went out in the streets, there were several vehicles that actually were, you can tell the drivers were agitated and they actually tried to hit a couple of the protesters. So we took it upon ourselves. Well, let's just block off the street to allow them to, to take the street and exercise their First Amendment rights. Up until the point around 11 o'clock hour that they began violently shaking our gate. And it was just like, man, I don't know what else to do. I mean, we've tried everything. We've given them the streets. We're letting them exercise their First Amendment rights, but we cannot allow you to destroy property. And I'm going to continue to say that.
And again, we're looking at that, and if you see video of it, they were shaking and shaking, going to pull it down. I don't understand what goes into that mindset. Why do you think that's going to be okay and that you're not going to be arrested? Why do you get so ignited and fueled up to say, well, why are you arresting us? Because you are damaging property.
Yes.
I don't understand the breakdown in that mindset.
Yes, and people have to understand. I mean, some people look at it, and I heard a comment, someone says, just a fence. Let's keep in mind that the citizens and the residents of Ferguson pay for that fence. I mean, it's taxpayer-funded fence, so that means a lot to those people that live out there. Two, again, it's important that I emphasize this. We don't care if you want to exercise your First Amendment rights. I will never, ever tone down this. We're not going to allow you to destroy property in this city. This city has been through enough. Since 2014, the community is like fed up. They just want to heal just like everyone else, and they just want to live their lives. Ferguson's a beautiful community. If you've never been there, nice homes, beautiful community, very diverse. Everyone gets along. That's all we want. We just don't want people from the outside to try to come in and try to tear up our city. And as long as I'm the police chief, that's not going to be allowed.
That's right. He said, I've had enough.
Yes,
I've had enough.
I
This
have.
is not going to happen. And how can we unite? That's literally the title of today's show is Uniting Ferguson. One of the things that you just mentioned that I'm going to kind of veer off here for a second is very powerful. And that is, have you ever been to Ferguson? Have you ever driven through? Have you ever supported any of the businesses? Do you sit on the outside and shake your finger and say, oh, shame on them, or I'm not going in there because of this, or I feel scared? Chief, I'm going to tell you, back in 2014, my husband and I were in Mexico. And he said, and I quote, don't tell anybody where we're from because I don't want to hear it. And I don't want to go into what I do, so don't tell anybody. We literally said, people gather in the pool and they're like, where are you from?
Right.
We said, Missouri.
Right.
There are people from other states that said, oh, is that close to Ferguson?
Right.
It didn't matter. If you said the state, it was suddenly, oh, Ferguson. Oh, you've got to be scared. I know some lady that was driving through. She was way over by 367 and 270 and said, I'm so scared to be driving through to come through town. I don't want to drive through that. I'm like, you're nowhere near Ferguson.
Right.
How do we break the stigma of people saying, I don't ever want to go into Ferguson because then, well, it's going to be a ghost town. And how are we supporting businesses?
Yeah, and I hate to say this because I know you're in the media, but I think the media did.
Nope, I'm walking. This is now real. I walked away from that because I was tired of it.
All right, it's I think the media did us a disservice.
I agree.
In our town, in our area. Again, I mean, anyone who's been in Ferguson, I mean, ton of businesses there, a lot of great places to eat. Ferguson is known for its faith community. They got ton of churches. I don't know a community that got more churches in it than the city of Ferguson. It's horrible that they have this reputation because of one single incident that took place in 2014. I mean, it's an urban community with a population of about 18,000, but Ferguson is no different than any other urban community. I mean, you're going to have some crime. I mean, but we have a lot of good things that take place in Ferguson also.
Amen. I grew up in Florissant, by the way.
Yes.
We were in Ferguson all the time.
Right.
We would go over to the park. We would
Yes.
watch fireworks. My cousin had a automotive business in there for the longest time, and unfortunately had to leave because he was scared for his own life
Yes.
because of the people who come in that don't belong there,
Yes.
that are not from there, that are damaging the city. And again, here we are 10 years later. You have said, what else can we do? You even said this part, which I shook my head and thought, you've got to be kidding me. You changed your uniforms because they were a trigger?
I did. So when I became the chief out there, just stopping in some of the different, eating establishments, just having conversations with people. And I heard a young lady, one day tells me, she said, well, Chief, she says, every time I see a Ferguson police officer, it bring back memories of the 2014 uprising that took place. Also, when I heard that, I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with many of my officers. And when I arrived, morale was at an all-time low there because these men and women have been beaten up for the last several years in regards to what took place in 14. So we talked about, what the future would look like for us. And, and we talked about uniform changes, and they thought that would be a great ideal also. So we changed the uniform, we changed the patches and the badges, but I left it up to them to come up with the design. I put a group of officers together. They want to make sure that the American colors were represented in the patch. And Ferguson has a history of trains, so they want to make sure they preserve some of the history there too.
And so has it been received well?
The community loved it. I mean, they thought it was great, that we changed the uniform. So.
Kim, so I want to address this. I want you to all understand. I want you to really get into the life of a police officer. During 2014, my husband was on the front lines of all of that. And back then, Vine videos existed, those quick 10, 15-second videos. I tried to go to sleep. I couldn't because I knew he was out there. I was searching in the videos to see, is he okay? Okay, there he is. He's okay, right? I would hear him exhausted come home. I mean, I want you all to go back through this so you can understand what they go through. He would tell me about the Molotov cocktails. He would tell me about the urine-filled bottles, the rocks. He would tell me about the comments that were made. I want to F your wife. I want to kill your wife, children, your kids. And you have to stand there. There it is. Oh, it brings me chills again. You have to stand there and not make a move. You are trained to not react to that. But how many of you can do that, by the way? How many of you, when you're prompted, you're at a bar having a drink and something like that is said, you're going to tell me that you're not going to mouth off and come back, and it is escalated 100 times that. Your police vehicles are being rocked. They're being set on fire. The entire town, the taxpayer dollars, the people who love the city of Ferguson are watching all of this take place. You see these pictures. And it takes you back through all the emotions all over again. The hate that you see in these pictures, Chief, how in the world do we ever get past this?
Man, it is tough. And like you said, it's just bring back memories. And I tell people all the time, police officers, we're humans too. I mean, we're not robots. So we have feelings just like anyone else. And to stand there on those lines and to hear people get in your face and just yell all kind of things at you. I mean, I know police officers who had recently lost like parents, and people were saying nasty things about their parents and stuff like that. It's hard to take. That is very difficult to take. I get a little emotional when I think about it.
You and I both started to cry again. I know.
It's man, I'll be the first one to tell you, police departments are not perfect. There's always things that we can do better, but the majority of our police officers are out there for the right reason and for the right, want to do the right thing. And I ask the public, man, give us a break, give us a chance, give us an opportunity, knowing that there will be some mistakes made, just like there will be mistakes made anywhere. But please know that the vast majority of us are really out there that want to protect and serve.
You and I both have tears in our eyes.
Yes.
And this is real. And I did a show a year ago when the Herman police officer was killed, and I didn't know it had happened. I woke up because I wasn't turning the news on anymore. I didn't want to. But someone had sent me a direct message and said, I think you want to know about this. And I said, I do. Thank you for letting me know. I went on, and all of a sudden I just became overcome with emotion and started crying. And I said, these are real, and this is okay, and we need to show this.
Yes.
But we need you all to understand that it affects each and every one of the men and women that serve in any police department, fire department, it's a very difficult thing to do, to put on that uniform and after being beaten down to go right back to it. But that is what you signed up to do.
That's what we signed up to do. And I'm quite sure when TJ awakens and come back to us, he'll tell you the exact same thing. You know, we all took this job. We knew that it came with an inherent risk, but we wanted to do it because it was a calling for us.
And boy, is that difficult after you're one of the people that the community was against, whether it's being pushed down the way TJ was or shot at or a member was killed. And then you have a son or a daughter saying, I want to go in because my father or mother were killed. And you look at that chain of the family saying, no, we lost someone. I don't want to lose somebody again, right? But we need people to protect.
We do.
We need someone in this field. And although we see numbers down, we're hoping to see it come back up again. I know there's parents out there that are saying, no way, Monica. In fact, my husband, one of his sons years ago said, I think I want to be a police officer. And Jim literally said, I'm the last one that will wear a uniform. He was so saying, no, I see it. I mean, it's hard, right?
Yeah, none of my kids, thank God, didn't want to be a police officer, and I'm kind of glad for that. You know, it's easy. I know myself, and I know what I can do, my capabilities and skill set. But as a parent of a police officer, man, that would just be, I mean, be tough, you know, because you know that you're not out there with your child. You can't protect him or her or whatever. So, I mean, I understand where Jim is at with that.
But you know that your mom and dad went through that.
Absolutely.
Right?
They did.
If they did, or you had a grandchild that came forward, you would have to support.
Absolutely.
You
I would
you
never
tell-
discourage
yes.
it. However, man, there's accounting jobs, there's attorneys. There's
Don't you want to be a doctor?
yes.
Don't go into broadcasting.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break. We have more with Ferguson, Missouri Police Chief Troy Doyle when we return. He wants to say, I can't believe I took your son's life. I don't know what I was thinking. I have so much regret and remorse. I've changed my life. Would you accept that apology?
I've never thought of that. Yeah, I would.
Do you think, because you talk about forgiveness, do you think that you all can ever forgive one another and come back together?
It wasn't just right. I'm not perfect. I'm, just because my name is Bush, I don't have it all figured out. And I think they know that too.
I was cyclically depressed, so I could be the happiest person you ever met at 11 a.m. I could be on cloud 9, and by 7 p.m. that evening, I'd be sitting on a couch with a gun in my hand and thinking hard not to get emotional. I
Never feel sorry for being emotional.
I really, I was at a space to where I couldn't believe that I had brought my children into this.
Where's the light? Because many of you probably feel that there's this darkness and there's this thunder cloud that's constantly over you. This family has dealt with so much.
So our journey is our journey. There has to be purpose in this pain. There has to be something more powerful. I have to find something to be blessed about every day. I have to count my blessings and have gratitude every single day.
Welcome back to the Real Monica Adams Show. Again, today we are on X, Facebook, and on YouTube, so you can watch on all those platforms. Share it with your friends and family. If they're not on Facebook, tell them they can watch elsewhere. And then we will have this as our audio podcast. By the way, we drop a recorded show every Thursday on all the audio podcast platforms. And Kelsey, by the way, is doing that for us. Kelsey will get this one ready for you so you can hear the message all over again. Sometimes you don't need to see the video. You need to listen in a whole new way, and you need to hear it maybe show after show to really drive that home. I do want to go to the comments and the questions. Pamela says, I think the Ferguson Police and Urban League has done all that was requested of them and more. People have to take full responsibility for their actions. This is very sad. I do want to pause on that for a second. So I just want to talk about relationships, because I was talking to your PIO. I was originally thinking of having you and a representative from the Urban League in together. We thought about it and thought, let's have Chief Doyle and I sit down first. Then I would like to show this to the Urban League and have them come in. Eventually, what I really would like to do is the two of you sit together with a live audience so that they can ask questions and we get that out there. That's something I would like to do in the future, if you're willing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how has the relationship been with, I hear that the Urban League has events and doesn't necessarily call you.
Yeah, so I mean, we're the Urban League is, I mean, obviously vast. They have operations in the city and in the county, of course, or whatnot. I just attended an event last week. Was it last week? Yeah, with Mr. McMillan. They had the grand opening of the new Urban League Center down there at 270 in New Halls Ferry. So we have communications with one another.
Okay. Well, Michael, I want to again have on the show, and then eventually sit down, because for me it's truly, and I do mean, I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park, because if people were willing to show up that think this way about police or this way about multiple different communities, then I want you to speak up, because you have a voice. But we have to figure out what is it that creates the division and the hate. I mean, the hate is the biggest part of it. Rose says, I used to spend a lot of time in Ferguson. My uncle lived there. It was great. But when I say I'm from St. Louis, they tell me they're sorry. Yeah, isn't that unfortunate? Chief, do you ever think this division and anger will lighten? I pray every day for a better world, not just Ferguson. Good question.
That's a very good question. I think that, I hate to say it this way, but with me, they have awakened a sleeping giant with this whole ordeal. And I'm on a mission now to unite our community together. And I think if we can start there in Ferguson, then we can spread it. I think our community is so supportive right now, and everyone is communicating with each other. And I think if no time than any time, this is the time now to unite and us be against the people who are trying to divide us.
My fear is that there's something that triggers it, again, like these protests that are peaceful. My husband always says, oh, it's peaceful until it gets dark.
Absolutely.
And then is it the feeling of we can do whatever because you can't see us? I mean, where does the mindset change by the change of the day?
It's almost like a criminal mindset. Most criminals like to operate when there's no light around, or, in the darkness or whatnot. It's just unfortunate that this turned out the way it did, especially when we had accommodated them, in every way possible for it to end up like this. And I always talk about the community, because that's what's more important. Obviously, TJ is important, but the community too, is that they have to endure this. And it's like, year after year. And I actually feel sorry for them.
Absolutely. Gwen just said this is very emotional to watch and hear on a daily basis of what is happening to the police. Kids from a young age need to be taught what the police are here for. There's such a lack of respect for authority these days. It's very disheartening. And I actually want to elaborate on that. I know when I was a child, we were excited when Officer Friendly would come and speak to, career days at schools. I don't think we've heard that term, Officer Friendly, and I don't even know how many decades.
No, and quite often, and many police officers will tell you, they'll be somewhere at a restaurant or something, and say a child is misbehaving or talking back to the parent or something, it's not often or not too uncommon for the parent to say, hey, you better be quiet or I'm going to tell that policeman on you. So it puts us in a bad light to small kids.
So there's a book of a gentleman that was on my show last year, and it's called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, and saying that that's where we are, that it starts in this polarization, this dehumanizing aspect, and that eventual killing, because it gets to a point where no one has a regard for another person's life. It used to be a bar fight turned, a fist fight from an argument at a bar, and now it's pulling out a gun, and you have no regard for your own life because you're going to go to jail, or that person's life you just took. One extra second of thinking, somebody pulling you away, and actually having respect for another human being, and then trying to ever find, and I know, I really hope that people comment later, and I'll pass along the comments to the chief, but I'm waiting for someone who says, I don't have respect for the police because. I told you, I believe, or the public information officer, Washington, this comment, and I'm just going to be real. I'm not going to say what TV station was at. That one doesn't matter. You can figure it out on your own if you want to. But this thing that I told you I want to do, which is with you, maybe St. Louis City, maybe St. Louis County, everybody coming together, and then the other side of the aisle, whoever that may be, and maybe you and I talk to say, those that are against the police, who do they listen to the most? I don't know if that's Michael McMillan from the Urban League, if it's NAACP, I don't know. We'll talk about this. But do you know that I wanted to do this years back? I wanted to sit in an open forum that we would moderate. We were having steps moving towards that direction. And the reason it never happened, Chief, and I believe I told Officer Washington this, was, and I quote, that someone in the newsroom said to my news director, no one gives a F what the police think. And guess what? It never happened because they went ahead and took that side. I was furious. I was emotional. I was disheartened. I was defeated. I sat there and thought, I'm going to work for this station and continue day in and day out when this is how you feel about what my police officer husband does, what these men and women do on a daily basis. What do you think when I tell you that? Because that exists in our media.
Think about that mindset. So if the police officers are constantly being demonized and just how horrible they are, think about a police officer, his or her day in and day out. It's hard to actually go out there and do your job because now you're afraid any interaction, any contact you have with someone is going to turn out to be negative. So when people talk about, well, after 2014, there was a Ferguson effect. I truly believe there was a Ferguson effect, and I think you've seen an increase in crime because many law enforcement officers were like, why would I go out here, risk my life, only to get a complaint or be subjected to be on the 5 or 6 o'clock news? I mean, that is real.
Absolutely. And what I wonder, and this is why so many people were saying that they didn't want to get into the field, is that when you put the uniform on, it doesn't matter what city or state you're from, you're a target.
Absolutely.
You're a target for people who are not respecting you anymore. And you don't know. A simple traffic stop turns into an officer being killed when they're pulling someone over to say, hey, you've got a flat tire, can I help? And then someone turns a gun on you.
Absolutely. And we, and the blame has just gotten to the point of ridiculousness. I mean, if someone can take off from us in a stolen car or something like that, if they go out and unfortunately hit and kill an innocent bystander or a person, law enforcement is blamed for that. No one is blaming the criminals no more, and which is it's a shame. And that's the reason why I think that society is where we're at now, because we have now pointed the blame at law enforcement and then has literally taken the blame away from the criminals.
The criminal, and then I'm also going to blame parenting. I'm going to blame government. I'm going to blame education. There's so many levels because to me, again, I was raised, and a lot of this also has to do with parenting. I was raised in a house of discipline and respect. And you can see that in me, all right? Thanks to those two people right there. I will say, you at home have a lot of blame that I'm going to place on you, and I'm sorry for that, but it's true that why are your children out there doing these things? The mindset of a criminal is a whole story that I want to do of how does it ever lead to that? And it goes back to what are your children doing? Do you even know, right? Where are they?
Right.
What, are you giving them this because you don't want to parent them? Then you shouldn't have children.
Totally agree, Monica. It's,
sorry, I'm being real.
no, I appreciate those comments. It's we're I'll be quite honest. We're in trouble in society in regards to what we're dealing with right now. Because I mean, how do you teach a parent how to be a parent? I don't know. I really don't know. And most of the parents that we have out here now, I mean, some of them even afraid of their own kids now. So I don't know how you fix that. I know. Over the past several years, there's been a lot of talk or a lot of movement in regards to, well, the people that are out here committing crimes, let's give them a break. Let's be a little bit lenient on them. Let's, help them in different ways. And I'm not against that. But what I am for is that let's take the people that are causing us the most harm off our streets. And once they're incarcerated, whatever help, counseling, job skills that you can give them at that point, man, I'm 100% for it, because I would want them to come back out to the streets and be productive members of society. Sure. But now we have to take them off our streets because right now they're not.
Absolutely. And we got to keep them in jail until they do heal and better themselves. I mean, that's a whole other thing about who is in a certain level of government. Again, we look at all this from prosecuting and then keeping them in jail, not letting people out.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a whole nother level of a series that we could do with you, Chief.
Yes.
Kelsey's in here with me. Is there questions and comments? Okay, let me go to these. I want you to be heard. This is your show as well. Parenting has a lot to do with the disrespect, Luann says. Makes me sad. Growing up in Minnesota, we felt safe back in the day. When I moved here, the riots scared me. There it is. The Michael Brown, George Floyd. Let's talk about Jason Stockley. Now this poor officer. Will it ever stop? Prayers for the police and the officer. At the time, Terry says President Obama had the opportunity to unite this country. Ferguson was the opportunity to make a change for the better. After all, the majority voted our first black president, and that tells me that we are not overall a racist country. He had the opportunity to speak as well as the media. Instead, it was adding fuel to the fire. so to speak, very sad. I can't imagine being in the line of fire as those police officers and what they encountered. That was when our country changed. What is your thought on that?
I mean, the politics end of it, I mean, it's aggravating for me. I'm not a politician, so,
Nope.
but I mean, we all have a voice in this, from our, federal or our local elected officials, along with, our, national elected officials or whatnot. I mean, we all have a voice and we all have a say-so on what this country can look like. And those, and I'll say this again, who will continue to remain silent is part of the problem. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, if we're really want to do what's right in this community, speak up.
Speak up.
Even if it's things that, like, again, I know 100% people are not going to agree with law enforcement. Tell us where you disagree with us. Give us an opportunity to explain why we do what we do or why we don't do what we do. But just to simply just say across the board, law enforcement is bad, it's not going to get us anywhere in society.
No, and the chief is literally saying, come to me and tell me.
Yes.
You heard him passionately in that press conference say, we've done this. What else? If there's something else, bring it to the table.
Yes.
And let's do it. But let's talk about this. Chief Doyle, you are a true servant. I could not imagine a world without our men and women wanting to serve. I would love to see more peace and kindness in the world, in our country, and in our community. Even the very young children say and do things that I would never have done at that age or any age. I know. Can we ever remove the hate and the rhetoric? I am in awe of anyone wanting to take on the task of protecting and serving. I am true to all first responders. Thank you for your time and being real with us.
Yeah,
what a powerful statement.
Yeah, that is a powerful statement. I mean, again, we're all part of the human environment, and we all grew up differently. We're going to see the world differently, but I don't know. I hope and pray that one day we're in a world that people can see things differently, but not turn it into hate.
You and I both. And so quick to react by statements that are made immediately saying, well, you're racist for that.
Right.
Why are we just using that as a blanket statement? I don't get that. Julie says, when I was working in the school district, it was kids raising kids. You asked, how do we ever begin parenting? There are great organizations. Parents as teachers, by the way. I did a really beautiful story on them back when I was at Fox. And I just thought, you're doing great things, but we need more of that.
Right.
We need parents to take responsibility. Pamela said, Monica, I agree. The blame should start with the parents because it is our responsibility to properly raise these children. Thank you, Chief Doyle, for your service and your voice, Terry says. So one of the things that I asked Jim, I said, is there anything that you want me to put out there or ask the chief? A lot of it, he said, talk about the change of uniform. You did it.
Yeah.
Transition of personnel, community relationship, Board of Aldermen relationship, he said.
Perfect. Our council people are very supportive of us. Many of them showed up at the candlelight, or not the candlelight, but the vigil that we had at the police station. Even after the incident, I've received phone calls from our mayor, everyone on our council saying, hey, Chief, we appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up, what you're doing. This is the first time we actually had someone stand up for our community. And that was very comforting to me.
And regaining trust on so many levels. There's so many layers of trust. That word alone, trust in the community, trust with government, trust within your own department, right? If you don't have that, I mean, if there is division within where you work, we all know how hard that is. And then he said consent decree and the impact in the community.
Yeah, so obviously Ferguson Police Department is on a federal consent decree, obviously what took place in 2014. But we're slowly, knocking those things down in the federal consent decree. Just recently, as of a couple of months ago, the federal judge commended us on the work that we have done, especially over the past year in regards to, some of the training that I mentioned as far as implicit bias training, First Amendment protection rights training, crisis intervention training, use of force training. So they've been commending us on that type of stuff.
I highly recommend, and I don't know, I know they used to do ride-alongs. Is that something that still exists?
Yes, and I think I mentioned it at one of the press conferences. I would encourage people to come to the Ferguson Police Department, sign up for a ride-along, sit in a car with one of my officers, and experience what they have to go through on a day-to-day basis. I think you'd be quite surprised.
I think everyone should. I think, as the kids are back to school, I think that should be something in schools that make them do that, because I think it would give you an eye-opening experience.
Yes.
And maybe that's what we need to do. I don't know. Yes. We're grasping at straws here to say what can be done. So I ask you this. So you were in St. Louis County for how many years?
31 years.
And so what made you want to switch and go to Ferguson, which a lot of people would say, I don't want that job?
Again, I knew that the trauma, so to speak, that the city has been going through for the last several years. And when I received a phone call from the city that asked me to come, and I'm like, man, I don't know. So I talked to the wife, and she says, Troy, this is made for you. You're a passionate person. That city has been through a lot. This is the perfect job for you. And, after getting her approval, I took the job, and man, it is a job. It's been a job, but I'm happy to be there because I feel like I'm making a difference out there.
You are, sir. You absolutely are. And hear this, where you took the oath and became the chief. What was that? 15 months ago.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you just brought it home and brought it so real. Let me talk with the wife.
I did. Got to get approval.
It's a good man for sure. Jim will say things to me of, honey, I know I'm nearing the end, but I don't know. I think I might want to do this. And so it's funny because we'll have friends and family that will say, he's asking you. And I said, you know what? And ultimately, we stand behind you. Yes. I would never stop him. Like if he wants to, he was with SWAT for 10 years.
Great guy.
He's actually saying, I don't know, I might want to think about going back into that. And I was like, okay. It used to be pagers. When the pager would go off, he would throw it across the room. All right, I got to get up. Got to go into this 2 a.m. call, right?
Yes.
And I was like, it won't be pagers, but the phone will be going off like crazy. It's all about who we surround ourselves with, right?
Absolutely.
And with what you all do, thank you again to you, to all the men and women in your department. Our prayers one more time going out to TJ, Officer Travis Brown.
Yes.
We'll continue to update you on his condition. I love the fact that there is some positive movement.
Yes.
And I can't wait for you to hold a press conference to welcome him back.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, please continue to give to the GoFundMe that we posted earlier. Oh, Marilyn said, Chief, who molded you? Who was your greatest mentor? What was your greatest influence?
Oh, man, probably my grandfather who, just a hard worker his whole life. He was a blue-collar worker. Just somebody I just grew up just admiring. I mean, he was a great family man. He took care of his family. Just all around great guy.
And that's what we need.
Yes.
Role models, really incredible role models in life that you can model yourself after. That was a great question, Marilyn.
Yes.
Well, sir, we always end every show with 100 Days to Freedom from. One of the books is Fear and Anxiety. One is Depression. One is Shame. And one is Anger. What do you feel most from our talk today?
That's a good one. Can you say multiple? No.
I was just going to say we could read a devotion from each one of those.
Anger.
Yeah, I felt it too. It's interesting that you picked that.
Yes.
We're going to wrap up the show when we return. 100 Days to Freedom from Anger. Stay tuned.
The world needs to be more positive.
Yep.
The world, and I'm spreading positivity with my air fresheners. So,
You and I both,
yes.
sir.
Sadly, I wasn't aware of the Monica Adams show until recently, and was I missing out?
I'm definitely going to turn this on in the mornings on our TV.
She's helping people to understand their value. She's helping women to transform their lives.
From the minute that we walked in, I felt just really comfortable and at home here.
You are always a ray of sunshine and positivity.
Thank you for what you do. I love this whole thing that you're doing.
It's good news. It's great news. It's uplifting and empowering.
But you were engaged, and I love that. So thank you so much.
Welcome back. I promised you a very powerful, emotional, passionate show. He was the perfect person to be the Ferguson, Missouri police chief because he shows that passion and he shows the real side as he did in that press conference. We're going to do 100 Days to Freedom from Anger in just a second. Kathy said, thank you for speaking of parents as teachers. You're welcome. I was an educator for PAT and the Child Care Center. Support for parents is important also, especially those who are doing the best they can with their pressures. Yes, wonderful organization. Pamela said, Chief Doyle, thank you for your service. Debbie says, thank you, Chief, for your service in a very enlightening hour. This has been a great show and continued prayers for Officer TJ. And then lastly, Luann said, thank you, Chief, for all you do and have done. Appreciate all of you. Yeah, we both felt anger because we've just got to release that. So who's in control? It's day 24 of 100 Days to Freedom from Anger. Do not let sin control the way you live. Do not give in to sinful desires. This is Romans 6, verse 12. Anger management is an illusion of power. That is, it's your illusion that you can get your anger under wraps by managing the symptoms. It might seem like semantics, but the goal is to be able to control, not manage your anger by treating it before the symptoms present themselves. Control begins long before the feeling arises within you. Control is recognizing that the circumstances that lead you to lose it aren't the problem. Your unresolved issues that inform your reaction to those circumstances are the problem. I just got to chill. You might have good reason to be angry. Perhaps you have been betrayed. You experienced a great loss. You've been treated horribly or unfairly. Maybe you have shame and guilt from sin in your life and you try to stay safe behind the rage. Anger begins to surface when people are at their most vulnerable. Sometimes the anger is uglier than the original offense. Turning the focus on healing and resolving your internal struggles can enable you to use anger in a more productive way. So anger is not a sin, but in your anger, you can give in to sin. You can be swept away by the driving force, and then you overreact. All these things we're talking about, these protests, the anger, making poor decisions that can alter your life and your relationships. So how can you take control of your anger? Begin by acknowledging that anger has controlled you long enough. Release the root cause of your anger through prayer, counseling. Somehow, reach out for help. Surrender to God the wrongs that were done to you. Grieve the losses. Look for resolution and healing from the pain. Begin to recognize patterns of the anger. For example, perhaps when you are pressed for time or you feel external stresses, anger flares easily. Be committed to finding healthy ways to control and express your anger. Hannah More said, "A Christian will find it cheaper to pardon than to resent. Forgiveness saves the expense of anger, the cost of hatred, the waste of spirits." And Paul Chappelle said, "As long as you live on earth, you won't see the end of injustices. Yet God desires for you to let go of them and hold on to his grace. Only he can give you the power to forgive those who have hurt you the deepest." Woo, that's powerful. Today's prayer: Lord, forgive my sin. Help me to have control of the anger within and to resolve any wound, any betrayal, any fear, or threat. Help me to trust you to right the wrongs and to lead me in the way of understanding. Help me to use anger for good and not allow it to use me for evil. In your name, I pray. Amen. Sir, that might be the most powerful 100 Days to Freedom we've done since this show began. You and I both felt it.
Yes.
God bless you.
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Dear friend.
Yes.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And continue to heal your city and to heal us. And for you, find your voice. Come to the department, say, this is what I feel needs to be done. Yes. Let's do this. And let's not stop the talk here. It's important to communicate. You know, I hope some of you are listening and say, I want my children to be the ones that change the world. So maybe they become a police officer and maybe they become some level of the change. I say it every single day when we wrap up the show. Dream big. Be whatever you want to be. But before you are anything, 2 words are important. Be kind. God bless you all. Have peace.